We are in this series called Parables. My name is Aaron. I'm glad that you're here this morning. Just look at your neighbor real quick before we get started and just tell them, like, hey, you look good today, or I love you, or like just give them a compliment. Let them know, like, hey, I like your hair, whatever you want to say. It doesn't matter. I like your shoes. Just give them a compliment. It just feels good to get complimented and to give compliments. So might as well start the day that way. I hope you guys are enjoying summer. Summer temperatures are definitely here, and so are the Olympics. Anybody Olympics fans in the room, just out of curiosity? Just yell at me really quick on the count of three. What Olympic sport is your favorite to watch? Ready? 1, 2, 3. So, okay. Somebody said curling, whatever. Nobody is excited about that. So softball, volleyball, all kinds of stuff thrown out in there. Fun, man. The Olympics are exciting. It's just fun. Track, all kinds of stuff happening. If you like to watch people run in circles and go left, that's fine. But whatever. It's good stuff. So there's all kinds of things happening in the Olympics this year, and all that's going on. And I looked at the medal count this morning. We have the most medals, but not the most golds at the moment. So I'm like, come on, USA, let's go. So that's happening, and it is definitely summer, right? Everything's going on. We're getting geared back up for school. I feel like there's mixed emotions on whether we want to go back or not go back to school. Always, it just depends on who you ask, but it's happening whether we want it to or not. And so that's coming up. That's one of the reasons we're doing Serve Day this month, is to serve our school and schools and do all kinds of different things around our communities. And so make sure you sign up for that. As you look at the Church Center app, you'll see all those projects. You can sign up for them. We're going to do some fun things with all of our different projects this fall, or this, I guess, end of summer as we get into it. So it's a good day. We're continuing this series called Parables, and Jesus used these stories to illustrate biblical or kingdom truths, and he would share these stories with different groups of people, and we're going to look at a specific parable or story today. But before we jump into that, I just out of curiosity, I want to tell you a quick story, and then I'm curious just in the room today if somebody in here might have a random talent that I'm going to talk about. So at kids camp or at youth nights or in kids ministry, or if you're a teacher, sometimes you do this game, and it's a terrible game to ask for, but we do it sometimes anyway. We ask this question. We say, hey, does anybody have any random or weird talents? And kids are not ashamed of their random and weird talents. So they'll come up and they'll do like, oh, I can lick my elbow, or I can touch my tongue to my nose, or like whatever it is, or they'll have some random thing that they can do. And this year we were at camp, and Jacob was like, honestly, he was killing time at night waiting on something else to happen. And so he asked this question. He said, hey, does anybody have any random talents? And this one kid comes up to him, and they're like doing all their different things. This one kid walks up and he says, I can tell when it's going to rain. And I thought, if this is true, this is phenomenal. So so Jacob asked him, when is it going to rain? I think he told him a day, and we were like, if it rains on that day, this is incredible. I don't think it rained on that day, but how do you like tell a kid, no, you don't have that talent? You can't say that to him. So you just kind of like, oh, that's cool, move on. But we all have random talents. Different people have different things they can do, and maybe you have a hidden talent. I'm not going to ask you to come here and show us this morning, but maybe you do. You have something like I can do this, and it's kind of weird, or it's kind of cool, or it's kind of unique, and I can do this weird random thing. So that's totally cool. But a lot of times we realize that we all have talents, and most of the time they're not weird, random things, but they're things that God gifted us with. They're things that God put inside of us. They're things that there's skills, there's passions, there's all kinds of things that God has put inside of us that he specifically looked at you and he said, hey, I want you to be good at this. He specifically looked at you and he said, hey, I want you to care about this. He specifically looked at you and he said, hey, I'm going to put a passion inside of you for something. I'm going to create this in you. I'm going to place it inside of you so that you will care about it. And some of you are going, God, why did you give me these talents? You ever have that moment? You're like, why am I good at this thing? Or, God, no one cares about this random thing that I'm good at. But God specifically created you with the specific talents and skills and resources and passions inside of you on purpose. And sometimes we forget that, and we just kind of go about it like, yeah, it's just normal life. That's just who I am, what I do. And we don't think about it as really a big deal. But I want to tell you that God specifically put these things inside of you. And so over the years, maybe there are things that you just are naturally good at, or maybe there's things that you have learned over the years. So I'll just kind of run through a list of things. Maybe some of these are you, maybe you have other things, but maybe you're like incredible at organization. I'm just curious. The room is always divided on this. Who is a very organized person in the room? Like, you love organization. Anybody in the room? A couple of you. You don't have to be ashamed of that. Be glad that you're an organized person. That's a good thing. How many of you are like, I have no care at all about organization. Everything can just be completely chaos and I'm okay with it. Whatever happens, happens. It's cool. There are always two different groups of people, and that's okay. But maybe you care a lot about organization. And let me just say, you are the person that keeps us all safe. You keep things from going awry. You make sure that things, there's money in your bank account. Like if you have a spouse and one of you cares about organization, the other one doesn't, they're like, I don't know, just spend the money. Like, I don't know what's in there. I don't keep up with it. And you have to keep up with it. You're an organized person and you care about organization and detail. And it's something that sometimes drives other people around you crazy because you organize things and they're like, why would you organize that? Like you color code your closet, whatever it is, like that's you. And you're like, yeah, but all my t-shirts go here. That's just me. All my t-shirts go here. All the long sleeves here, like all the way down. And some of you just judged me and you're like, are you kidding me, Aaron? That's you? Yes, that's me. That's a thing that God put inside of me to care about that matters nothing to most people, but like God put it inside of me and it's a weird, unique thing. And I get it. Maybe it's organization, maybe it's teaching, maybe you love to teach. Maybe you love to help people learn something else. And I don't mean teach as in like you have to be a formal teacher, maybe you are, but you just like to really teach maybe your kids or maybe your spouse or maybe other people in your community, in your friend group. You like to teach them different things, help them learn new things. Maybe it's cleaning, like you have a passion to clean things. Some of you are like, nobody has that passion. There are people out there that love it. My mom is one of those people, she loves to do this. She loves to clean. She thinks, she put a vacuum cleaner in my hand at like 3 years old. I'm like, I can barely walk. What are you doing with me right now? And she's like teaching me this passion of hers. And I didn't get the same passion that she got, but I definitely got the skills out of it. But some people like love to do that. Some people love working on cars or motors or just, like building things or repairing things. I hate it. Like if you want something to be worked on, do not call me, okay? I'm the worst person in the world to call unless you just want me to like bring you lunch. I can do that, but other than that, you don't want me repairing anything. But some people just love it and they're naturally gifted at it. They're just craftsmen. Maybe you like to sew or you like to design things, or you love photography or videography, or maybe you like to just fish or whatever it is. But you have these passions and these desires and things inside of you. Have you ever thought that maybe God put those in you? Maybe he allowed you to go through certain experiences that developed those things in you. He allowed you to be able to be gifted. He gifted you with these certain things and allowed them to be developed through different scenarios throughout life so that you would get better at them. Maybe it was on purpose. I think sometimes we just think that I'm naturally kind of good at this. And we don't realize that a lot of the rest of the world isn't good at the thing that you're good at. We think of it as just like, it's just normal life. Like I just do this all the time, no big deal. I can just like do math in my head and do, all this stuff and it's no big deal. And I'm really good at accounting things and okay, whatever. The rest of the world isn't always good at that, but you're really naturally good at it. Or maybe you're like, I can just look at a motor and I can go, just like put this here, put that there. I'm not even going to say parts because I always sound like an idiot. But like, just make it work. And you just like make it work. And you're like, and when people do that, I'm like, you're phenomenal. Like, can I buy you dinner? Like, this is incredible. For me, I'm like, how do I have more parts here than I started with, I feel like, and nothing is working. I think it's in worse shape than when I started. Like it's just one of those moments. And you just think it's natural. And it's like, this is normal. Like, this is who I am. Or like, like no big deal. And you ever thought maybe God put that in you? Maybe he specifically said, hey, I want you to be good at this. And maybe it was because other people taught you, or maybe it was because of life experiences, but God crafted it in you. He poured it into you. He molded you to be good at that thing or those things, and he gave you these passions, and he gave you a resource, not just gifts and talents, but you ever thought that everything that God has put in your life at this point, as of right now, in this moment, just think about all the things you have, all the things you've accumulated, all the stuff that you have around your house, all the things that you have in your accounts, all the money you have in your accounts, all the people that you have in your life, all those things that you've collected over the years. You ever thought that, what if God gave me all of these things on purpose? Let that sink in for a second. All this stuff, God gave it to me on purpose. Now I want us to look at a parable that Jesus teaches, but he teaches it to a specific group of people. He does not teach this parable to an entire crowd of people. He teaches it to 12 people. They were known as his disciples. And he gives them this specific parable, and he teaches them through this story. And he's talking about all the stuff that they have, all their gifts, all their talents, all their abilities, all their resources, their stories, their life experiences, all those things. And he says this in Matthew chapter 25. If you want to follow along, you can turn or swipe there. It'll also be on the screen. He gives this story, and it's a common story. You've probably heard it or heard it referenced at some point in time, whether you have been a part of church or not. You probably heard this story referenced. But even if you know it or you think you know it, like follow along really closely. I want to pull out a couple things. Verse 14, Matthew 25. It's referred to as the parable of the talents or the parable of the three servants. It says, again, the kingdom of heaven, this is Jesus talking, can be illustrated by the story of a man going on a long trip. He called together his servants and he entrusted his money to them while he was gone. He gave 5 bags of silver to one. He gave 2 bags of silver to another and 1 bag of silver to the last, dividing it in proportion to their abilities. He then left on his trip. Okay, so depending on which version or translation you're reading, a lot of times the word that's used there is he gave 1 talent to some. He gave 5. He gave 3 talents, the word talent, which is just a weight or a measurement, normally translated into mean money or some type of monetary value, okay? Essentially, the point of it is that it was valuable. He was giving them something valuable before he left on a trip. Okay, so he's telling this story to 12 people. His 12 closest friends that have been living with him for the last 3 years. They've been traveling together. They've been doing life together. They've gotten to know each other really, really well. They've had like long, like road trip moments where if you've ever been on a road trip with people, you get to know people really well on road trips. You know, like you get stuck in a car or for their case, a caravan with people for a long period of time, and you like know those people really well. I tell people before you get married, you need to go on at least a 6-hour road trip. Like in a car together, one stop, not more than one. You have to be in the car for 5.5 hours together, 6 hours together. You need that in your life. Like you just need it. You learn a lot about each other. They had been doing life together. And Jesus sets them all down. And what they didn't know is that Jesus was about to be crucified shortly after this story. He's about to be crucified. And so he sets them all down. And he begins to tell them this story. He begins to prepare them because he knows, this is some foreshadowing, he knows he's about to leave. He's about to die, and then he's going to be raised from the dead, and then he's going to leave. He's going to ascend into heaven. He knows that's going to happen. They don't know it. And so he's trying to prepare them to take over and to take on what he has been doing and what he has been preparing them for the last 3 years. And so he keeps going in verse 16. It says, the servant who received the 5 bags of silver began to invest. We use that word a lot around here. Jessica said it multiple times a while ago, and we want to invest in others. We intentionally chose that word, partially out of this passage. They began to invest the money and earned 5 more. And the servant with 2 bags of silver also went to work and earned 2 more. But the servant who received the 1 bag of silver dug a hole in the ground and hid the master's money. After a long time, their master returned from his trip and called them to give an account of how they had used his money. I don't know if you know this or not, but we're followers of Jesus, and we're passionate about that. And if you don't know this part of the story of Jesus, like Jesus came and he died for our sins, and he left and he went to heaven. But when he went to heaven, he told us he would come back one day. And he would return to earth one day. And whenever he returned to earth, he would come and he would gather up his church, all the people who follow him. And at that point in time, we would have to give an account for what we had done. And so what he's illustrating in this passage, he's saying, hey, when I leave, you're going to be responsible for all of the things that I have given you. All the stuff, all the things that I have taught you, he's telling these 12 guys, everything that I've given you over the last 3.5 years, you're responsible for taking that, for investing that, for working with that. You're responsible for it, and I'm going to return one day. And when I do, I'm going to ask you the question, how did you spend what I gave you? How did you invest what I gave you? How did you use what I left you and what I gave you? And so he's kind of setting up this prequel, if you will, of what's going to happen in the future. And in verse 20, he keeps going. He says, the servant to whom he had entrusted the 5 bags of silver came forward with 5 more and said, Master, you gave me 5 bags of silver to invest, and I earned 5 more. So Jesus, the master, returns, and in the parable he's referring to himself. He returns. The guy with 5 bags gives 10 over. He says, hey, here, I'd invested 5. I got 5 more. Here's 10 total. And if you're familiar with the story, you're like, yeah, Aaron, we know this. But the master was full of praise, verse 21. Well done, my good and faithful servant, which is the same thing that God, or that Jesus will say to people at the end of time whenever we go to be with God. If you've been following Jesus, these are the same words he's going to say at that point in time. If we've been following him, he's going to say, hey, well done, my good and faithful servant. He says, you've been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. And there's this party, there's this excitement. He's like, I mean, if I'd be excited, he's like, you just doubled my money. Like, that's pretty awesome. You just invested what I gave you. You used it wisely. Now you got double the amount. Good job. He's congratulating him, celebrating with him. And then in verse 22, it keeps going. The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver to invest, and I have earned 2 more. So the master said once more, well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I will give you many more responsibilities. Let's celebrate together. So they keep celebrating, and there's this whole party, and it's all exciting, and it's fun, and these guys are like, yeah, we doubled up the money that he left us. We used it wisely. We invested it. We worked hard, and we were given these 2 things, and they just keep going. And I think one thing we can learn out of this is that one had 5 and one had 2. They both doubled it. And let me just say, I think we live in a world, especially because of social media, and I'm not against social media. I love social media, but we live in a world where comparison is real. Okay, like we compare ourselves to people around us all the time. And it's easy because we have everybody else's highlight reels around us, right? We judge our lives based off what other people post on their stories and on their social media pages and things like that. And let me just say, you are responsible for what you have been given. You are not responsible for what someone else has been given. These guys, they both doubled what they had, but only one of them was given 5, one of them was given 2. And he wasn't like, man, I could have made 10. I could have maybe I could have figured out a way to have 10. Maybe I could have figured out a way to get more. He just took what he had and he owned it, and he was responsible with what he had been given, and he didn't pay attention to what the other guy had been given. Too many times we're like, I want this, but what we start with is different than that person starts with. Follow me for a second. We oftentimes look at other people's lives and other people's accounts and other people's stuff, and we're like, man, I wish I had. And we start to envy what they have or what they've accomplished or what letters go before or after their name or who they are, who they're with, or what kids they have or what accomplishments they've had in sports or whatever. And we begin to do all this. And we begin to envy all these things. And the truth is they didn't start where you started, and you didn't start where they started. And so you're responsible for what you have been given. Let the rest of that stuff, all that weight that you put on yourself because you feel like you're not where they are, let it go. Let it go. God didn't give you the same skills, talents, passions, abilities, money as he gave them. And you can't be mad at him for that. You just got to go, you know what? I got this, and this is what I'm going to be faithful with. This is what I'm going to be faithful with. This is what I have. And in this season of your life, this is what God has entrusted you with. Will the next season look different? Possibly. Did the last season look different? Possibly. But in this season, this is what he has entrusted you with. Be faithful with that. Be faithful with that. Whether it's a lot or a little, or you're like, I don't even know what it is. I'm here. Be faithful with that. We're not responsible for other people's amounts. We're only responsible for our amount. Okay? Oftentimes, I see this happen, and I've been in this same trap as well, where we look at a story like this, or we think about this, and he says this at the end. If you could throw that last verse up there for me, verse 23. It says, the master said, well done, my good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in handling this small amount. So now I will give you many more responsibilities. So it all starts with this small amount, right? Like if you have kids or you're a teacher or you have grandkids or there's anybody in your life that's younger, or if you're a manager over anything, you give people small responsibility to find out, will they actually follow through? Like you want to see, will they do the small thing that you've asked them to do? And then if they do that, then you go, okay, I can give them a little bit more, right? They were all familiar with this. People have done it to you. You've done it to other people. It works the same way. Jesus is showing us. It works the same way in the kingdom of God. He's saying, hey, I'm going to give you a portion, whatever that portion is for you in this season of life. And if you'll be responsible with that, and if you'll steward that well, and if you'll invest that and work hard with that, then I can trust you with more responsibility. I can trust you with more in the kingdom of God. And he's not just talking about money here. He's talking about the way we use our talents, the way we use our skills, the way we harness our passions, the way we manage our time, the way we manage our finances, all these things, the way that we handle our lives all accumulate into this thing of him going, hey, can I give you more responsibility? This is what oftentimes I see, and I've been in this trap as well, is we really want a promotion. Or we really want a salary increase, or we really want a certain spot on a sports team, or we really want a certain grade in a class, or we really want, you fill in the blank, whatever it is that you're wanting, and we want that thing, but the truth is that we haven't been faithful in the little thing to ever be able to be promoted into that thing. I know it's going to sound a little harsh, okay, but this is me. I'm talking to Aaron. You can just ignore it for a minute if you want. But sometimes I want something, but I've shortcutted the process. And God goes, it doesn't work that way in my kingdom. You don't get to shortcut the process and not be faithful with the little things, and then I'm not going to trust you with the bigger things. I'm not going to trust you with the more important things if you want to shortcut the process. Let me take it really practical. There's some students in the room today. If you want a position on a team and you want to be in a certain level of athlete or in a certain grade in a class, you don't get to shortcut that process and skip workouts or only do 10 of the 15 required things and say you're done and then get promoted into that position. You have to do it the way that is asked of you to be done. And in the kingdom of God, it's very similar. Oftentimes we want more money and God's going, have you been faithful to tithe on the little bit I've already given you? We're like, I want the promotion, and God's going, you can't handle the stress of the current level that you're at yet. If you can't handle this stress, I'm not going to let you get promoted. You can't handle this, and God's going, will you be faithful in the little so that I can give you more responsibility, so I can give you more? But oftentimes we're like, man, I want more, I want more, I want more. And God's going, have you been faithful in the little? And a lot of times we're like, man, this is just a small amount. This isn't a big deal. This is small. God, I can handle more, God. Like, I want more. God, give me more, whatever it is that you're wanting. Give me more. Give me more influence. And God's going, until you can stop gossiping about the few people that you influence, I can't let you influence more. It got really quiet. I love you, okay? Just smile at me. Let me know you love me too. I'm not being harsh at you today. I'm just like, I want you to see something that all of us have to revisit. There's nothing in this that you don't already know. It's just a revisit and go, man, okay, how do we do this? How do we reapply this? You see, in verse 24, he keeps going. And he says, the servant with the one bag of silver came and said, Master, I knew you were a harsh man, harvesting crops you didn't plant and gathering crops you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I would lose your money, so I did what? I hid it in the earth. And he says, look, here is your money back. And he's proud of this moment. He was cautious. He was careful. He presented exactly what had been given to him in the exact form that had been given. He cleans it off. He says, hey, here it is. Here's everything that you gave me. It's right here. He did nothing wrong. Some people would say he was just cautious. He was just careful. He was just being, mindful. He didn't want to waste it. He didn't want to ruin it. He was just being careful with the master's money. And he presents it to him. And in that moment, the master replied, verse 26, you wicked and lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why did you deposit my money in the bank? At least I would have gotten some interest on it. Verse 28, then he ordered, take the money from the servant and give it to the one with 10 bags of silver. This does not seem fair. This does not seem fair. And a few weeks ago, we were talking about a different parable, and one of the points of that message was that God's kingdom is not about fairness. It's not. Fairness is a human idea. God's kingdom is full of grace and it's full of forgiveness, even whenever it's not deserved. And it's also full of accountability. And it's also full of, hey, you get 5 and you get 2. Why? Why, God? That's not fair, God. Why did they get this and I only have this? And God said, because that's what I gave you. You be faithful with the 2. Let him be faithful with the 5. Don't worry about the 5. You be faithful with the 2. Don't be worried about the person with the 1. You be faithful with the 2. Be faithful in that. And this doesn't seem fair. He takes it from him. And in verse 29, it says, to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now throw this useless servant into outer darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. We don't like to read that last verse in this passage because it seems harsh. And it is harsh. I don't like reading that either. I'm like, God, why you got to write that? Like, why, Jesus, why you got to say that? Like, couldn't you just been like, and we put him in the corner and let him sit there for a while to think about what he had done, Like, why do we got to throw him in weeping and gnashing of teeth? Like, come on, God, that's a pretty harsh thing. And as I read that, I know it's a story. He's giving us a story, right? It's a parable. It's not realistic, but is it realistic? Is it foreshadowing for what's about to happen? Absolutely it is. He's telling the 12 people that he is closest to this story. 12 guys sitting in front of him, and he's saying, hey, I've invested in you. I've poured into you. I love you. Everything I've taught you, you're going to be responsible to invest it back into the entire globe when I leave. And if you don't invest it into the entire globe, whenever I return, I'm going to ask you about how you did with it. And if you don't use these skills and these talents and these stories and these experiences and the money and all the things that I've given you in this season of your life, if you don't use them well, if you don't take what I have given you, if you hide what I have given you instead of putting it out for all to see, you're going to be accountable to those actions. We live in a culture that absolutely hates accountability. If I were to ask, I'm not going to have you do this, if I were to ask who really loves accountability in their life, very few people would raise their hand to that question. Because we are in an independent culture. I don't like accountability. I don't love it. I'm not like, yeah, hold me accountable. That'd be great. Like, nobody says that. Nobody's like, hey, I just need to find somebody that will hold me accountable. You're like, I really want that in my life. I want somebody that's going to show up in my life, and they're going to ask me hard questions, and they're going to challenge my way of thinking, and they're going to tell me that that's not okay, and they're going to encourage me whenever I need it, and they're going to say, hey, I don't think that's a good idea. Nobody wants that person in their life. It takes a lot of relationship before you can become that person or before someone can become that person in your life. Some of us, we have this moment where we're like, I don't want that. But the truth of what Jesus is saying, he's saying, hey, you're going to be accountable to me. You're going to be, not to me, but to him. He said, you're going to be accountable to me for what I've left you with, for what I've given you, for each season of your life. You're going to be accountable for what skills and what talents I put inside of you. You're going to be accountable to me for the amount of money I have given you. You're going to be accountable to me for the way you raise your kids. You're going to be accountable to me for the career and the things that you invest into your future. You're going to be accountable to me for the relationships you have with the people around you. You're going to be accountable to me for all of those things. And he's setting this up with these guys, and he's helping them understand. 12 guys. Remember, this isn't a crowd. This is 12 people. And he's saying, hey, one day, you're going to be accountable to me for what I'm leaving you. And the same thing he was saying to those 12 guys. If you're a follower of Jesus in the room, he's saying the same thing to you today. He's saying the same thing to me today. He's saying, hey, Aaron, the time, the talent, the gifts, the resources, the money, the relationships, the church, all the things that I have left you, you're going to be accountable to me one day for all of those things. And you're going to have to give an account, and you're going to be responsible for those things. Are you hiding what I have given you, or are you investing it back into people? And a lot of times I think we look at this story and we go, man, this guy, the guy that buried it, the guy that hid it, he took no risk, man. He was just being wise. He was being cautious. He was protecting the money. And the truth is, he did nothing bad. It wasn't like he went out and just squandered all the money and lost it all. He didn't do anything wrong necessarily. He didn't do anything bad necessarily. But the problem is he did nothing at all, and that is the problem. He did nothing, and that is the problem. You see, God expects us all to do good works with the things he's given us. In Ephesians 2:10, I don't know if you know this, and some of you just need to hear this morning. You are God's masterpiece. Some of you, your self-worth, you think so far away from being a masterpiece. You just need to hear that again. You are God's masterpiece. He crafted you. He crafted you. He intentionally designed you with skills and talents and passions and abilities to be able to do things. He calls them good works for the kingdom of heaven. And so he designed you with all these things so that you would do good works, so you could do good works, and we're going to be responsible for those things. And so my question today is this: are you investing your talents and skills and resources, or are you hiding them? Are you investing your skills, talents, and resources, or are you hiding them? That's a heavy question. Oftentimes we don't think about it a lot. We're like, yeah, I'm just going through life. I'm just trying to make it through the week. I'm just trying to get through today. I'm just trying to make sure that things don't explode. If you have multiple kids, you're definitely trying to make sure things don't explode. You're just like, I'm just trying to make sure that everyone makes it through the week without ending up in the hospital. Like, let's just make sure we make it through, right? Like, that's kind of our thinking at times. And this question is a deep question, but are you investing your talents, skills, and resources, or are you hiding them? Investing servants, they do three things. I'll give you three thoughts real quick, and we'll end out today. Investing servants do three things. Number one is they utilize what they're given for the master's purpose. They utilize what they're given for the master's purpose. They don't compare what they've been given to everyone else. They don't complain about what they've been given because they didn't get what the next person got. They don't take what they've been given and hide it. They utilize it for the master's purpose. These first two guys, they took what they had been given, they invested it. We say we want people to know Jesus, grow together, and invest in others. We're responsible for how we invest our lives. As followers of Jesus, we're called to invest our lives. One of the reasons we do Serve Day, we do it a couple times a year. One of the reasons we do it is because we want to invest back into our communities. As a church, as an entire body, if you've never been a part of one of our Serve Days, let me just kind of tell you the way it goes. Sunday morning, August 29th, we'll come together like a normal church service. We'll have about a 30-minute service. Everybody will be in one room, all the kids, everybody's in here. We'll do like one or two songs. We'll share just for a really brief moment. And then we'll have project leaders around the room, and you can go be a part of their project. And then everyone will leave here, and they'll go to their projects, and you'll get a shirt, and we'll send lunch with you and all that stuff. And then you'll go, and you're just going to spend time investing back into our communities. The last Serve Day we did, we invested like 140 hours into our communities just from one day. It's just a powerful day that we go, you know what, God, you've given our church different skills, different talents, different abilities, different finances, different resources. We're going to take a specific day and we're going to say, you know what, we're going to invest into our communities. We're going to utilize what we've been given for kingdom purpose. We're going to utilize it for kingdom purpose. And so how, at an individual level, are you utilizing what you've been given? How are you utilizing the money that you've been given? How are you utilizing the skills and the talents that you've been given? How are you utilizing the people that you've been given for the master's purpose? Not just for a gain. Yeah, you can use it for gain. You can use it for financial gain or influence gain or whatever. But how are you using it for the master's purpose? How are you leveraging the roles that you're in your life for kingdom purpose? How are you leveraging the resources that you've been given for kingdom purpose? How are you leveraging those things? How are you utilizing them? The second thing investing servants do is that they're responsible and they're accountable to the master. They're responsible and they're accountable to the master. I told you we don't like the word accountability. Nobody likes that word. I don't even like the word. But we talk about this idea of being accountable. We all are accountable to someone. Even if you're like the highest boss that you have, there's no one above you, you own your own business, you're the leader of your home, whatever, you still have someone to be accountable to. His name is Jesus. And we are accountable for what he has put into us. We are accountable for the stories he has given us. If you're a Christian, you're accountable for your testimony. You're accountable for the story of what God's done in your life and how you share it or hide it from other people, or how you invest it in other people, or how you hide it from other people. You're accountable for that. And we're responsible for that. And these first two guys, they understood this. They were like, we're going to invest it. We're going to invest what we've been given. We're going to be responsible. We know there's going to be a return. We're going to be accountable for what we've been given. The third thing investing servants do, or that they receive rewards and increase. They receive rewards and increase. Oftentimes, we watch people get rewards and increase. And let me say, sometimes people who get rewards and increase, they're not necessarily doing it God's way. A lot of people that get rewards and increase aren't doing it God's way. And that's frustrating and that's confusing. The Bible talks about that as well. We don't have time for it today. But whenever we take what God has given us and we invest it, we receive rewards and increase. Does that always mean we get more money? No, it does not. This isn't a prosperity gospel. This isn't Jesus going, hey, if you'll do this, you get more money. That's not what he's saying. That's not what he's saying at all. What he's saying is if you'll be obedient and you will invest what I have given into you, you're going to see rewards and increase around you in your relationships, in your own personal life, in your family, possibly in your finances, possibly in your skill sets, possibly in your experiences and your stories. You're going to see all of these things begin to be increased, and you're going to receive a reward. Maybe not even here on earth, but whenever you come face to face with Jesus one day, he's going to go, hey, well done. You invested what I gave you. Let's celebrate together. And you're going to have this eternal celebration called heaven that you get to be a part of. But he's going to ask the question. There's two judgments. I don't know if you guys know this or not. Just a little bit of theology for you. There's two judgments that happen in heaven. When we get to heaven one day, we will be judged based on whether we had a relationship with God or not. The sin that's in our life or not in our life. We'll be judged on that. And that's access into heaven. After that, if we have made our relationship with God right and we don't have sin in our lives and we're pure, and we get into heaven, then we're going to be judged based on what we did with what we had. We'll be judged on that. There's a second judgment that we'll actually get judged based on how we handled what we were given in this life. What Jesus is saying in this parable, he's saying, hey, one day I'm going to bring accountability to you, and I'm going to ask you, how'd you manage your relationship with your spouse? How'd you manage your kids? How did you manage your career? How'd you manage your finances? How'd you steward all of these things that you were given? How'd you steward the toys and the tools and all the stuff that you've been given? How'd you steward those things? How'd you use them for kingdom impact? Here's a really cool thing. Everybody in this room, you have influence in some level of your life. Whether that's influence over your kids, influence over a friend, influence in a career, influence in a workplace, in a school, on a sports team, students in the room, you have influence. You have influence you don't even realize that you have on younger siblings. You have influence. And one day, we will be judged on how we use that influence with people. One thing I try to get people to understand all the time, we say this, we were joking about it at Church on the Lake, like people will say, hey, don't do that, you're at church. And I'm like, hey, you are the church, don't do that. Instead of, who cares where you are? You are the church, no matter where you are. And so with the influence that you've been given, with all the tools and skills and resources you've been given, it's not just something that we want you to use inside of these four walls. It's not just something we want you to use inside of a church setting. Be the church wherever you are. If you're a teacher, if you run a business or you're a manager, bring your biblical skills, the things that you know the Bible teaches. You don't have to open up a Bible and teach people these things in a work setting or in a school setting, but bring these things that God's put inside of you, these gifts and talents and abilities, everything that you have, bring it to the table and go, you know what? I'm going to use everything I have that God's given me to influence and to impact these people that are under me and that are around me, no matter where I am. If you have resource that other people around you don't have, use that resource to impact people for the kingdom of God. I love I love being around people who have access to things and they're generous with those things. We have some friends that have access to some great, really expensive toys and things like that, like boats and all kinds of cool stuff that are just like awesome things. And they're like, hey, we just want to be generous with this. Anybody that needs to use them, whenever they want to use them, they can use them. Let me say, you throw a pair of keys to an $80,000 or $90,000 thing at someone, and you go, hey, I just want to be generous with you. I just want you to be able to use this and be able to have fun and take people and do fun things with them. There's a level of generosity in that you have an understanding that, man, God has given me this. This doesn't belong to me. This is for me to be able to bless other people. Whenever you own a business or you're running a business and you go, you know what, I see something in people under me and I'm going to raise them up and I'm going to entrust them to be able to lead things and be able to have things. There's a level of going, you know what, this is God's business. This isn't just my business. I'm going to use this to leverage influence in people. I'm going to let people be raised up. I'm going to celebrate them. I'm going to let them get good at what they're doing. I'm going to make sure I invest in them and resource them. There's a different level of appreciation. There's a different level of investing that's happening in that moment. It's different. When we see it as, hey, this is all God's. This is what he gave me. This is what he entrusted me to. This is what he has allowed me to have in my life. I'm going to steward it well. And what Jesus is trying to teach these guys, he's saying, hey, the 12 of you, I'm giving you the most valuable thing in history. The most valuable thing that's ever been given. I'm giving you my story. You have my story to share to everyone around the globe. And as followers of Jesus today, we have the same responsibility. He's saying, hey, if you follow me, you have my story. My story is the most valuable thing you've ever been given. Share it, don't hide it, invest it, don't put it away like a keepsake. I see a lot of times people like give their lives to Jesus and it's like this keepsake and we just hide it somewhere inside of us and we don't ever talk about it. We don't ever share it. We don't ever let people know that we're Christians. We don't ever let people know that we're followers of Jesus. We don't let people know how it's impacted our lives and we just kind of tuck it away like it's this hidden thing. And I think in that moment we're being just like the guy who buried it in the ground, and Jesus is saying, hey, don't bury it in the ground. Don't hide it away like a keepsake. Let people know the greatest story that was ever told. Let people know what I have done in your life. Let people know that I have blessed you. Let people know that I'm with you. Let people know. Don't hide it. Invest it. If I could challenge you today with anything, it would be don't hide it. Invest it. Don't hide that skill. Invest it. I asked Jason to come back up here with me and play for a minute. But don't hide it. Invest it. Maybe it's like a skill that you're like, man, this is random. This passion that I have, this skill that I have, this talent that I have, it doesn't seem like, I don't even know how to use this. Ask God, how do I use this for your kingdom? How do I invest this into your people? How do I capitalize on this thing that I feel like I'm pretty good at, but I don't know how to use it to invest in to your kingdom? How do I do that? How do I invest that? I ask you to bow your heads with me for a moment. I'll ask you a couple questions this morning as we close out. One of those is, how can you use your skills, talents, resources, all those things to serve someone this week? Let's get real practical for a minute. This week, not in your life, I'm talking in the next 7 days. How can you use your skills, your talents, your resources to serve someone else this week? Just think about that for a second. The things God's entrusted you with, the things that he has given you, how can you use those things? How can you invest those things for kingdom purpose? Maybe it's a skill. Maybe it's a passion. Maybe it's money. But how can you invest it this week to serve someone else? Second question I have for you is this. If Jesus were to return today and we were to all be judged based on what we have done with his story, would he say, well done, you've invested it? Or would he say, man, why did you hide it? Why did you hide my story? Why did you hide your faith? Why did you hold on so tightly to all the things I gave you? Why did you hold on so tightly? Why didn't you invest it? Why didn't you pour it back into other people? How would he respond to you on that? Let's just take a moment and reflect on those two things. I think a lot of times we come to the end of a church service and we feel like we've done it, we made it through, we heard something good, maybe we just walk out, ready for lunch, whatever. And the truth is, if it doesn't change our tomorrow, then it's pointless. What happens in here, what happens when we come face to face with the Word of God, what happens when we come together as believers, it should shift us and change us to where it affects our Monday. And so how do we serve? How do we take what we've been given and serve someone this week? And some of you are like, man, I already do that. And that's awesome. If you're already doing that, that's great. What's another way? What's another way? Some of you have skills, and I'm just going to be honest with you for a moment. Some of you have skills, and man, you might see them as no big deal. And so you hide them not intentionally. You just don't think anything about them. And man, God's going, hey, I gave you this skill. I gave you this talent. I gave you this thing. I gave this to you. Yeah, it was to make some money, but also it was for you to serve other people with it. Be intentional with it. Invest it. Invest it so that the kingdom gets bigger. Invest it so that people's lives are changed. Invest it so that you make a difference in somebody's life. Don't just pass it on as like, yeah, it's not a big deal. I've been doing it my whole life. No big deal. Think about those things. What are those things that come so natural to you? And you're like, yeah, this is not a big deal. I've been doing this my whole life. And maybe that's because God created it in you and he put it in you and he's saying, hey, I wanted you to utilize this and I want you to invest it back into other people. And I want you to find unique ways to use it to build my church and to build up people in my life. And I want you to be able to use that. And then what are we doing with the story? What are we doing with God's story? Are we sharing it? Are we hiding it? I'll give you a couple next steps. One is find a way you can serve people this week. Find one way. You can take your skills, your talents, your money, your story, and you can serve someone else this week. And then I want you to share what Jesus has done in your life with someone this week. Oftentimes, as followers of Jesus, we forget. We stop. We don't think it was a big deal anymore. Like everybody, let's be real. We live in the South. Everybody's heard of Jesus. That's how we feel a lot of times. And that might be true, but who knows what version of Jesus they heard. Let's share our story, your story of what Jesus has done in your life with them. Hey, this is who I was. This is how this goes. If you don't know how to do that, let me give you like a really brief, this is how you do it. This is who I was before I met Jesus. This is how Jesus changed my life. This is who I am now. Just share that with somebody this week. Pray for God to give you a moment this week where you can put his story on display and you're not hiding it, but you're investing it back into somebody else. Let me pray over you this morning. God, we love you. Lord, we're thankful for who you are. God, we're thankful that we get to be a part of your church. And God, this morning as we look at a very common parable, a parable that's been told thousands, hundreds of thousands of times, I pray that, God, we would see it with fresh eyes and that we would realize that, God, we are responsible and accountable to the stories and the resources and the people and the finances and the skills and the talents that you've given us. We're responsible. And when we're faithful in the little things, the things that no one else sees, the things that no one else cares about, when we're faithful in those small things, God, then you can trust us with more responsibility. And I pray that, God, we would be a group of people that we don't dodge the responsibility, but God, that we are faithful in the little things. And because of that, Lord, you continue to pour out onto this church and onto these individual people. God, you begin to pour out blessings and influence and increase and abundance onto them so that they can continue to invest it. Not just so that we have more, so that we can say, look at us, but so we can continue to invest it. Because we want to know Jesus, we want to grow together, but God, we really want to invest what you've given us into others, whether that's our story, our time, our finances. We want to invest it in others. Lord, we're thankful today for being able to be a part of this, being able to give back to other people, being able to use what you've put inside of us to do good works and to make a difference. In Jesus' name.